right, I'd like to call to order the council meeting Monday, June 25th, 2018. Opening prayer, Pastor Emo Grederson, Associate Pastor, Holy Cross Lutheran Church. Welcome.
Thank you. Good to be with you again. Just a quick note before we get started. I've been taking over the scheduling of all of these. Anyone you know in the community that would like to help start off the meeting on the right note, let me know. Get me their information. I'll be happy to schedule them in here too. Quick scripture passage, 1 Timothy 2. First of all, then, I urge that supplications, prayers, intercessions, and thanksgivings be made for all people, for kings and all who are in high positions, that we may lead a peaceful and quiet life, godly and dignified in every way. The way I thought about this for tonight was not so much the way we typically do, where we want to pray for you and the job you're doing. We want you to do a good job for everybody, so we lead these peaceful and quiet lives. But being in ministry, being a pastor, I've seen how often the personal lives of people in church work, all the mess that goes on sometimes makes it difficult for us to do our own jobs. And so tonight I want to make sure, take a moment to pray for each of you individually, personally, as well as professionally, because I know that that's an important part of what you do here. We want to make sure that you guys are doing well, not just doing your job well, but that you have the support and the prayers that you need at home and personally as well. So let's pray. Gracious God, we thank you so much for your goodness, and we thank you especially for these wonderful servants that you have blessed us with here, that are gathered here tonight to take part in some of the business that needs to be done to take care of the people in our community. We ask you, Lord, of course, that you would be with us here tonight, that you would provide wisdom and guidance, that all the decisions and discussions that take place would serve to advance the welfare of all people in our community, in the North Canton community. But we also ask especially, Lord, that you would be with Doug, Daniel, Stephanie, Dominic, Mary Beth, Mark, Daryl, Marcia, with David, Patrick, Tim, Laura, and Mr. Graham, our engineer. We know that they deal with a lot of things outside of this room that impact the way that they can do their best to serve us inside this room and for the betterment of our community. So we just ask, Lord, that you would bless them and just make all of their pain and all of the difficulties and challenges that they face, that they would subside, that they might be equipped and prepared to do the best that they can to serve the people of this good community. And may the people of this community surround them with support in whatever way they need so that they may continue to serve us well. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, clerk, please call the roll.
Soretta.
Here.
Foltz.
Here.
Fonte.
Here.
Kiesling. Here. Peters.
Here.
Revolt.
Here.
And Waring. Here. 7 present, Mr. President.
All right, thank you very much. At this time, motion and second to approve as presented. Committee of the Whole meeting minutes, June 4th, 2018. Council meeting minutes, June 11, 2018. And financial reports, May 2018.
Motion to approve as presented.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The ayes carried by unanimous voice vote of 7.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, for the record, I will be abstaining for June 11th.
Okay.
Council meeting minutes. All right, at this time, if you wish to address council, please step forward, state your name and address.
Chuck Osborne, 307 Fairview Street, Southeast, North Canton, Ohio. My comments tonight are in response to the repository's report of last week's Council of the Whole meeting titled Heated Debate on North Canton's Income Tax Increase. That news report, coupled with 17 years of my observations of the actions of North Canton City government, is the basis for my remarks tonight. In regards to the debate over the proposed 10-year 0.5% income tax increase to fund a new safety center, Council members Soretta and Warren suggested that the city hold focus groups. Council member Kiesling responded stating, quote, "We've got to be visionaries. The 7 of us are the visionaries, not a focus group. We are the focus group," close quotes. I have not seen much vision in North Canton City Council for a great many years. First, the plan for a safety center has languished since 1999. Why has it taken nearly 20 years for the realization of a safety center? No vision here. Second, continuing to mistakenly believe yourselves and mistakenly mislead citizens of North Canton that it is possible to keep the city's income tax rate artificially low for these last many years, keep the rate low for another 10 years, and then return to the current artificially low income tax at the end of that 10-year term is not financially sound vision. And further, to tell taxpayers that the city can revert later back to the city's 1.5% income tax rate is sheer ignorance at the very least and deceitful at most. North Canton's artificially low income tax rate, ostensibly maintained to lure new business to town, has not resulted in new business because there is no open space available for development in the city. North Canton has no available properties for business growth and has not for many years. This problem could be remedied through an ongoing annexation policy, but this has not happened. No vision here. And why not adjust the city's tax reciprocity so that all residents share in the cost of the city's safety center? I will not recommend the income tax increase unless all city residents share in the cost of building this most vital city facility. Third, and quite ironically, on the Committee of the Whole agenda for last week was a discussion to restart the city's CRA tax abatement program. Wow. 1 minute you are discussing a proposed income tax increase to generate vitally needed revenue for the city, and moments later you are discussing ways in which you give away tax dollars desperately needed by the North Canton City School District. No vision here. School Superintendent Jeff Windorf made it clear to this body on September 26, 2016 in public remarks and in writing that the North Canton City School District was adamantly opposed to CRA tax abatements. City residents have repeatedly opposed the CRA tax abatements, which historically benefit for-profit corporations and bankroll multimillionaire developers. As elected representatives, you are bound to listen to your constituents. Fourth, recently there was an opportunity for the city to increase income tax collections with the annexation of property on the city's western border that would have resulted in 75 high-paying medical jobs. City Council, led by Councilmember Soretta, proposed legislation to allow access to city water for Omni Orthopedics without annexing into the city as city policy requires, despite the fact that annexation of this property was vital to the economic growth of North Canton. No vision here. I have not seen a self-sustaining financial vision that is viable for the city of North Canton for nearly 2 decades. Instead, I see an artificially low income tax rate crafted to attract businesses to locations that do not exist in the city. I see a populace that does not contribute income tax dollars to the community in which they reside. I see a populace that will not be asked to contribute to the construction of a vitally needed safety center. And I see a city council that turns its back on economic growth when it is on the city's doorstep. I would have to agree with Mrs. Kiesling that this city needs visionaries, but unfortunately there are none to be found in these chambers. Thank you.
Thank you, Chuck. Anyone else else wishing to address council, please step forward.
Scott Kelly, 232 Woodrow, Northwest. I'm here to talk about the 0.5% income tax increase. I am against it. I'm not against our safety forces. I just question the timing and the funding of this. Like Mr. Osborne said, 30% of the people are going to be paying for something 100% of the citizens and visitors of North Canton will use. Is that fair? I don't think so. And I think, what, about 4 out of 7 of you aren't even affected by our income tax because you work outside the city. So how can you, that aren't even affected by it, be voting for this?
But we pay into the city.
Let him finish.
Okay, but you, okay, through this, right?
Point of
Through
order,
this.
point of order.
Is this,
Point of order. This is not
is
a back and
this
forth.
your
Let him finish.
full-time job? This is not your full-time job, right? Mr. Foltz works in the city of Canton, does he not? Okay, you pay a little, because you make, what, about $7,000 a year? Being council, maybe a little bit more for council president. But it's not affecting you like it is affecting me. It's affecting me 100%. I have one full-time job. I work for Plain Township, okay? So you're asking 30% to pay for 100% of this, okay? We didn't like the school levy because it was an increase in income tax, but you know what? Everybody was taxed. That was fair. It's not fair that you're only taxing 30% of us, right? I finally made top rate at my job. Finally. I'm right here. Imagine yourself in water and you're on your flat feet and you can breathe, right? With this last property tax passed by the school, I'm going to be paying about $2,900, $2,960 in property taxes for a house built in 1952. If this next levy passes in August, I'll be paying $3,028 a year in property tax for a house built in 1952, okay? We negotiate in March in Plain Township. Who's to say I'm going to get a pay raise, okay? I'm here now. I can breathe. I got breathing room. If this goes through, my first paycheck of the month, because Mr. Fonte, you're a realtor, how do most people pay for their taxes and insurance? They roll it into their mortgage payment, do they not?
Yeah, most.
And how do they pay that mortgage? Through their paycheck, right? One paycheck, I'll have $150 to get me through to the next paycheck. 100. My daughter is in gymnastics and baton. She loves it. Do you think I'm going to have to quit that? I got to find something else, right? You know, maybe you should think, and Mr. Mayor, during our campaign, in our editorial board interview, you said one of the smartest things you did was not raise the city income tax. Why now is it okay? Are you not running for re-election in 2 years? So you can go ahead and run the, raise the rates? I mean, I just talked to Mrs. Stroya before here, and the city's current levy, the school district's current levy, 4.5 mil levy, expires in December of 19. Why don't you have a property tax ready to go at 4.5 mil January 1st of 2020 when that expires? I'm not going to see a difference. I'm going to be paying the same. But then again, everybody is going to be paying, right? I'm not against the safety center, okay? I worked in those buildings. I get it, okay? I just question the timing. How can we bring this up now when we just passed the school levy? My property tax is going to go up $353. We got another special election in August. That passes, now that goes up to $428, okay, extra a year. So now I'm at $3,028. You're passing this, and then Miss Brown says, well, she doesn't want to burden the other 70% of the people, because they pay, outside the city. Well, how is that fair that you're just only going to tax 30% of the people? It's not right. People need to think.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else wishing to address council, please step forward, state your name and address.
Larry Tripp, 1127 East Maple, North Canton. In observing, listening, and reading of the proposed 0.5% city income tax increase for North Canton residents, I am of the opinion that council as a whole is quite reluctant to place this issue on the ballot this November. Messrs. Foltz, Soretta, and Fonte have openly voiced their opinions during the past couple weeks, and each indicates hesitation that this is the path the city should take at the present time. Recently, during the council meeting at Walsh College, Mr. Soretta spoke as an educator about the wishbone and backbone as they pertain to leadership. As such, I would believe and expect the three of you to use your backbone in a no vote as Ordinance 48, 2018 comes for a vote tonight. Table this until more facts are known and residents given more opportunity to question and voice their opinion. Hold a couple town hall meetings. Vote no tonight, or if you have changed your mind and vote yes, please explain your new position during your council reports. For that, I would thank you. From a monetary standpoint, I readily admit this issue does not affect me personally, being a senior citizen. However, from a mistrust of government from top to local level, and now particularly at the local level, Ordinance 48, 2018, as written, has too many unanswered questions for me to vote yes, should this issue be placed before the voters. Questions that immediately come to mind are, why was the issue just brought to light to an unexpected audience in early June and now being rushed to meet an August deadline? Why not wait till the spring of 2018? What is the cost of the building going to be? I read you have no idea, 10 million, 12 million? A lot of difference, $2 million. What's the cost? Let the people know. Where's the building be located? Again, why would I vote for something not knowing where it's going to be? Why are operating costs built into the issue? Why are there even thoughts of purchasing land? Can Station 1 be enlarged and renovated to accommodate all facets of our safety force? Could City Hall be renovated to accommodate the police by eliminating garages, the entrance down there, make office? A lot of ways to go. What impact have you received from the Hoover District or Walsh College? Could land to the north of Station 1 be used As I read the ordinance 48, 2018 and pondered some of the questions I've just passed you, I immediately think of the many times Mrs. Ballman has reminded me of Bernie Sanders while running for president, stating, "U.S. voters are stupid." Well, he may have a point. I don't think North Canton residents are that stupid to vote for something they do not have any knowledge on. And lastly, City Council members as visionary. Mrs. Kiesling, where was council visions when 2016 you approved $175,000 for Station 2, had to hold a special election for EMS in 2017, having a special election knowing that you might place it to a 0.5% increase, building islands on Maple and then demolishing. City Hall not funded last year, but now an additional, what, couple $100,000 this year. Are those ones of vision? Hardly. As Cleveland shortstop Francisco Lindor would say, visionaries, you gotta be kidding me. Thanks.
Thank you there. Anyone else wishing to address council, please step forward, state your name and address.
Good evening, Melanie J. Roll, 308 Portage. I've been attending these meetings about a dozen years, and sitting and listening to dialogue of council and administration discussing city policy, I'm guessing might be different than you having your conversations. It's much easier to hear the nuances of folks when you're listening rather than when you're in the conversation. You pick up things that maybe some of you don't during your discussions. During the last two meetings, during the discussion of the combined safety center, the arguments seemed identical to the discussion of needed school buildings in meetings of the Board of Education in the summer of 2017. Both the need for new school buildings and a safety center are sound. The question has been how to pay for each. I'm still alarmed at the notion the schools need to stay with property tax and the city will use income tax to generate revenue. Those I heard through the nuances of various people talking, stay in your own lane, so forth. You want the schools to do property tax, you want to do income tax. Doesn't the city tap into property tax for many of the levies and has taken money the voters had allotted to the schools through the CRA program? As far as the 2017 school levy, was it too ambitious? Probably so. Did the schools do a good job of selling those levies? There were two, of course, the income and the property. Probably they did not. So now it's the city's turn to persuade the voters to increase their taxes. Two suggestions. Raise the income tax to 2%, as your legislation proposes, but keep the credit rate for those working outside North Canton at 1.5%. Taxpayers who live in North Canton would help pay for city services. 2, define where you want the new safety center to be. The argument of not disclosing the location because of possible ramification with landowners who might want to sell, I think is bogus and makes voters uneasy, but that's just the way you want to go. Finally, if I could ask Ms. Brown to clarify, how many tax forms are filed with the city most years? And how many North Canton residents actually pay income tax? You have this 30%, but it's ambiguous. So if you could clarify some of those things, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Melanie. Okay, anyone else wishing to address council, please step forward, state your name and address. Last call. We're on to old business. May I have a motion and a second to read by title only the second reading ordinance number 46-18.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The ayes carried by unanimous voice vote of 7. An ordinance authorizing the mayor of the city of North Canton, Ohio to enter into a successor collective bargaining agreement between the city and the Ohio Patrolmen's Benevolent Association Dispatch and Lead Dispatcher regarding State Employment Relations Board CERB case number 2017 MED 10-1312 and declaring the same to be an emergency.
Darrell.
I move that we amend this ordinance to reinsert the emergency clause, which we deleted last week when we reconsidered it.
The week before last.
The week before last, excuse me. We do need an emergency clause.
Okay.
Does not have, current, does not have it.
Yeah. Is there a second to that motion?
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The ayes carried by unanimous voice vote of 7.
All right, thank you. We'll do the same thing for 47-18, I'm assuming, right?
But that is in.
That's correct, okay. All right, motion and a second to adopt the second reading ordinance number 46-18 as amended.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The ayes carried by unanimous voice vote of 7.
Thank you. Motion and a second to suspend the rules of council.
So moved.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The ayes carried by unanimous voice vote of 7.
And a motion and a second to adopt under suspension.
So moved. Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The ayes carried by a unanimous voice vote of 7.
All right, thank you. Motion and a second to read by title only, second reading, ordinance number 47-18.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The ayes carry by a unanimous voice vote of 7. An ordinance authorizing the mayor of the city of North Canton, Ohio to enter into a successor collective bargaining agreement between the city and the Ohio Patrolmen's Benevolent Association patrol officers regarding State Employment Relations Board served case number 2017 MED 10-13-13 and declaring the same to be an emergency.
All right, thank you. Tim covered this in the last meeting. Any questions? I want to thank him for his hard work on both of these, by the way. We greatly appreciate it. Motion and a second to adopt second reading ordinance number 47-18.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The ayes carried by a unanimous voice vote of 7.
Motion and a second to suspend the rules of council.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The ayes carried by unanimous voice vote of 7.
Thank you. And a motion and a second to adopt under suspension of the rules.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The ayes carried by unanimous voice vote of 7.
All right, thank you. May I have a motion and a second to read by title only, first reading, ordinance number 48-18.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The ayes carried by a unanimous voice vote of 7. An ordinance amending Chapter 192 Income Tax of the Codified Ordinances of the City of North Canton to increase the rate of municipal income tax from 1.5 to 2% for a period of 10 years, January 1st, 2019 until December 31st, 2028, for the purpose of providing additional safety funding for construction of a new safety building to house police dispatch and fire EMS operations, supporting fire EMS staffing, providing additional training opportunities for staff for safety forces, and to create a resource for future maintenance of the safety building.
Chairwoman Warren.
Thank you. So we've been talking about this for a couple of weeks now, and Laura had a couple more questions that people submitted to her, so we'll let her talk about that. I don't know if any of you had any questions from constituents this week, or if you looked up anything, or thought about how different communities have gone about this, or have any suggestions. Both chiefs are here again, and so if there's anything specific that they need to, answer, they can do that as well. But we do continue to talk about it, and really, they talked about different ways we can do this. In the end, it's going to be up to the voters to decide if they want it. So we're not pushing this through, we're not jamming it through. These are the public meetings. This is a public meeting. It's now been, thanks to Jessica, on the front page of the paper at least once. Last week it was on the front of the local section, right? So we've had, decent coverage about it. And kind of in the community, you'll hear both sides, but that's what everyone's supposed to do, and they can weigh in and come here on those different Monday nights to talk about it. Darrell, you had a thought about one maybe change in the...
Yes, if I draw your attention to the actual ordinance itself, not the short title, but I would like council to consider amending this document to delete in the introduction, supporting fire EMS staffing. That's continued down in the fourth whereas, as well as funding an increase in fire and EMS staffing. That's not the purpose of our proposal. And then in section 1, again, we recommend that you'll find language about funding an increase in fire EMS staffing. Again, that is outside the purview of this particular ordinance for our discussion. I would recommend that this be amended upon its first adoption by deleting those items.
Okay, so really focusing on the building at hand and not the...
This is
staffing
for
hasn't
a
been an
building.
issue.
Yes, and I
Yeah.
think you know, to one of the questions, one of the concerns was that we were going to drift into and make this permanent.
Yeah.
Our intent has been to fund the structure and then sunset the
Right.
tax.
Right. You know, and I think some people commented, did we just spring this on people? Well, I mean, it can be, I guess, related to when you have a house and all of a sudden your roof needs attention and all of a sudden you wait, and then you say, I have to do something. I think that's what we finally kind of came to, and there were discussions that, again, have been happening for many, many years. And it came up, and now we're giving it, you know, almost 2.5 months to talk about it, so.
I have a
Laura,
question.
oh, go ahead.
No,
Dom.
go ahead, Laura. Tell us your thing, and then I have a question.
Sure, thank you. This week I had 3 questions come in from residents. One kind of goes to the point that Darrell was just making, and that was a question actually from Mr. Tripp. He called my office last Tuesday. Will the money from this levy be placed in the general fund and used for operations? And no, by law, the money from this levy would have to be placed in the special fund because that's what's going on the, or could go on the ballot before voters. It could only be used for safety purposes. After the debt would be paid off on the building and building maintenance is funded, any additional revenue could be used for one-time purchases such as specialized training, which is mentioned in the ordinance, or let's say a new technology or a new piece of equipment that increases efficiency or safety long-term. Because this is a tax that would expire after 10 years, we wouldn't want to, as you said, drift over into operational costs like personnel. So I think editing that language makes that even more clear that, that we don't want to, you know, we never want to be the city that has to lay someone off because the money has run out. The second question I got was actually from my next door neighbor. He said that most of the coverage that he had seen and things he had heard had focused on the impact on residents, but he's a small business owner, and so he asked me how that would impact him, and I said if your business is located in North Canton and you're earning a net profit on your business, then that net profit would be taxed at 2% rather than 1.5%. So just wanted to make that clear. In addition, if you were a business that has employees in North Canton and you're withholding from their paychecks, that withholding percentage again would go from 1.5 to 2. The financial impacts on the employee, but you know, it would be a change in the employer's process just to code in that different number in their payroll software, whatever they might use. The third question that I got from multiple residents and people I talked to, and we've heard it a couple times here tonight, was about reciprocity.
Right.
You know, why aren't we having more people share in this tax? And Mr. Tripp had asked me about this when he called me, and my comment to him was, there's no perfect tax. There's no tax that will impact every single resident of the city. If you do property tax, of course you have people who don't own property and thus don't pay that. If you increase the rate, you tax people that work in the city, some of whom are residents and some of whom are non-residents that drive into work. And then if you change the credit or the reciprocity, that's directly impacting the residents who may work elsewhere, but you're never going to capture everyone because of course there's some people with no income at all, like, you know, folks that are retired or have no income. So there's no silver bullet, no magic perfect tax. You know, if council wanted to consider some sort of combination between the rate and the credit, that is their option. I believe, Tim could correct me if I'm wrong, that the credit is a function of council voting, whereas the rate has to go before voters. And then finally, because I don't want to forget Melanie, I don't have the number of tax forms filed in front of me, but I will get that information.
Question I have. So the safety center concept is really good and important, and I agree with it, just like I agree with schools need help too. The thing I wasn't sure on is the funding mechanism. You know, like when I looked at Jackson Township, they got a big donation. Maybe there's some silent person out there that would like to make a big donation as a possibility, so I'd like to make that a public request. Anybody that would like to offer millions of dollars, that would be a nice thing, and will go down in history. The other thing is that instead of 10 years, is it possible to make it 7 years, or is it possible to just have a limit on what we want to do so that if we, because I believe the income tax will continue to increase as we evolve into more people move into the community. That's my wish. And the other thing is that, is there language from a legal standpoint, Law Director Fox, that if we hit a threshold, it automatically extinguishes instead of 10 years, maybe it might extinguish in 6 if we're doing really well, if we hit our mark. So the mark might be 12 million for the building and maybe 4 million in a reserve fund or something like that, instead of 20 million if we stretch it out 20 years, or 10-year plan. So I just wanted to know, is that language, can it be manipulated to be able to do that? Is there a way, if we're doing better as a whole in the city, that, you know, we can back that off? You know, I mean, it's true, we are the lowest all around, you know, we're at 1.5%. You know, I guess it's possible we could raise it eventually, but I'm just thinking, you know, I always like to wait till last resort because it does cost a lot of money for the people that are earning money and trying to raise families. Just a thought.
Laura, I think you talked about this last week a little bit too, so.
Right, well, and I could just address the,
Yeah.
you know, the wishing and hoping that we keep increasing our tax, and I do as well. However, when I'm gonna forecast something, last year was our record year on income tax in the last, you know, good while, if not ever, as far back as I could find records. I can't forecast based on the best case scenario. I have to do it on a look back. So if we were collecting this tax on 2017 revenue, yes, it'd be about 2.3 million a year. But if you look back even 5 years and take an average, it's only about 2 million a year. And so that's what I've used in the calculations, and that's what I feel comfortable with. Obviously, if council chooses to put some other language in there, that's your option, and it's voters' option to vote yes or no.
But you also commented last year, or last week, how if it was a 10-year bond, you could have a no fee penalty, where if in 7, 8 years we said, hey, we're good, you could
Yes,
say
we
that's it.
absolutely can
Yes.
structure the bonds so that it was callable after 7 or 8 years.
Without a penalty.
And those bonds would be called and paid off. At that point, then you have to decide what you're gonna do about the tax. Do you continue collecting it, or do you then shut it off at that time? And I think that maybe is what.
I think the comments that I've received personally is that once you put it in, it'll never go away. And the thing is it's like, you always want to make sure that we're doing everything we can. I mean, a lot of times we are doing everything we can. It just doesn't seem that way. Sometimes people don't see it that way. So we always have to demonstrate we will go above and beyond to be transparent on what we're doing with our dollars, so that when we do raise it, you know, the people are going to be 100% behind us.
Well, and it's, I mean, they have to vote that, so again, that goes back to the
I agree.
public.
I know, but we want it to be, I mean, we want to not miss the mark. We want to make sure it's just like the schools when they put it out there. They were hoping it would pass, and it was defeated, 72 or 3%. So that was, I mean, we don't want that to happen. We want to make sure our gauge is correct when we put it out there.
Okay. Any other questions that anyone received, or?
No, the only debate I've had with people or comments is where it's going to be built. I'm a little uncomfortable with that.
Well, I don't think
I'm for the safety forces building, I'm for police and fire, I think it's needed. I don't want it across the street in the green space. So if that vote came up, I would be a no. I think it's got to be on Main Street. I think we got to get, we just really need to take this seriously and make sure that, we use every avenue we can to build it in a place that's not going to affect the neighborhoods or other opportunity for green space that's needed for events down the road. I just think it's a bad fit across the street.
Have you heard something that we haven't heard?
Well, I'm just saying, maybe it's rumor.
Yeah.
I just want to take that off the table right now. I don't want it to be
Pat, do you want to address it?
a
Because,
situation where voters are saying,
we
well,
don't-
it might go there, I'm going to vote no because it's going to go there.
yeah, I have not heard that.
Well, categorically, let me just say, and make it without any ambiguity, that we are only interested in Main Street.
Okay.
We're not interested in any side street to Main Street. Not interested in the Charlotte Avenue property. Have no intention of being involved in taking a green space and turning it into something that would be a place for another municipal building. That is not our intent. Now, as far as where on Main Street, yeah, I guess we're just going to have a philosophical difference on the approach. To me, being in business, I would like some flexibility in order to get the best price. But if you go out and target the exact spot that you want to get, and that person says, well, yeah, it's yours for $10 million, okay? Well, that's why we're approaching it in this way, is that we are committing to the voters that it will not be in a neighborhood. We want to get it out of the neighborhood.
Right.
The EMS building that's on 7th Street, we want that out. We want it on Main Street. And according to the chiefs, as long as they have direct access to Main Street, that will not affect their ability to respond in an emergency situation. So I just want to make that clear.
Appreciate that clarification. I think that goes a long way with some voters here.
So this is for Tim. Tim, does there need to be legal language in here for it to self-extinguish, or is there a certain threshold, or is that just something we just call the action to cancel it?
First paragraph of the ordinance. Self-extinguishes on
At
December
10 years, that's what we
31st.
talked
No,
about.
I meant instead of stretching it out 10, if we can do it quicker, that's all I'm
the way
saying.
the bond would be, though. She would figure that out. That would be up to our
So
finance director.
does it automatically cancel out if we hit a mark, or do we have to call
No,
action?
take an action of council.
Okay.
I've had more than a handful of comments, particularly because the EMS building resides in my ward. The folks up and down that street are ecstatic that that building is coming out. The operations are going to be moving to Main Street, especially the ones that work second shift.
Their kids are going to be sad.
Yeah, as are my kids, I'm sure. And one of the other comments, criticisms that I received was, how can you consider this after you've made an addition to the EMS building? And I inquired for that as well. And the situation was, and I'm not sure if anyone realizes this, you had male and female EMS personnel sleeping in the same room overnight. That, I don't know if you would have a problem with your wife sleeping in the same room with another man. It just opened up a can of worms that we didn't want to go down, and it was immediate. That need was immediate.
And the chief talked about that the other week.
Chief did talk about it.
Yeah.
So that's why we did that, because it was the right thing to do. So that was that, and that's basically the only comments that I've received. Other than that, you know, and in my ward, I have a lot of senior citizens. They are in favor. I mean, they rely and are proud of our safety services. So that's where I'm at.
Well, I'll second the motion to amend.
And for the record, in paragraph 1, supporting EMS or fire/EMS staffing, in the third, whereas fire/EMS staffing is necessary to reduce the cost of supplemental staffing full-time employees, delete that. And fifth, whereas, as well as funding an increase in fire EMS staffing. And then finally in section 1, as well as funding an increase in fire/EMS staffing, delete all.
4 different sections, right? That's what I'm counting.
Correct.
Yes.
So did we get the question
Okay, so there
answered?
was a motion to amend.
We need a second.
Was
I
there?
seconded.
Yep, you second. Please call it.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The ayes carried by unanimous voice vote of 7.
Okay, back to the chair.
Okay.
Ready to call for a vote?
Yes. I move we adopt ordinance, the first reading of ordinance 48-2018 as amended.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Nay.
6 yes, 1 nay, for the adoption of the first reading.
All right, thank you. All right. May I have a motion and a second to read by title only the second reading ordinance number 49-18?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The ayes carried by unanimous voice vote of 7. An ordinance authorizing the supplemental appropriation of funds of the City of North Canton to be appropriated from the unappropriated sources of the Park Development Fund to the Facilities account in the amount of $750,000 for the current expenses during the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2018.
Thank you, Chairwoman Ware.
So we talked about this last week, and we're just kind of moving some monies around in the different accounts. Laura, do you want to say anything again about it, or?
This is just appropriating the money that we'll be getting from the state for the Parks grant. Just getting them on our books.
Okay. If no other discussion, I move to adopt.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the ayes carried by unanimous voice vote of 7.
Thank you. Motion is second to suspend the rules of council for 3 readings for ordinance 4918.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the ayes carried by unanimous voice vote of 7.
All right, thank you. I may have a motion and a second to read by title only the first reading, resolution number 10-18.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the ayes carried by a unanimous voice vote of 7. A resolution directing the Board of Elections to place upon the ballot at the general election to be held on November 6, 2018, the question of increasing the City of North Canton's rate of municipal income tax from 1.5% to 2% for a period of 10 years, January 1st, 2019, until December 31st, 2028, for the purpose of providing additional staffing funding for construction of a new safety building to house police, dispatch, and fire EMS operations, supporting fire EMS staffing, providing additional training opportunities for safety forces, and to create a resource for future maintenance of the safety building.
Thank you. Chairwoman Ware.
Okay, so to make it similar to the reading that we just did, we just need to amend again the same whereas and the sections 1. Do you want us to go over each of those again?
Yes, we should get
Okay.
those on the
Daryl, did you just highlight them?
Yes, please, thank you. In the initial paragraph, supporting fire/EMS staffing, delete. Third whereas, delete that entirely. And the fifth whereas, as well as funding and increase in fire/EMS staffing. And then finally, in section 1, supporting EMS staff, fire/EMS staffing.
Yep.
All deleted.
Okay.
You need a motion to amend.
Okay. A motion to amend?
I'll second the motion to amend.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the ayes carried by a unanimous voice vote of 7.
Okay. Are you ready to motion to approve?
As amended.
Yeah. Motion to approve as amended.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed,
Nay.
the ayes carried by unanimous vote of 6 yes, 1 nay for the first reading.
All right, thank you. Reports, Member Fontaine.
I just wanted to say, safety service building, blending everybody together is a great idea. I just still want to see, is it possible to reduce it to 7 years? I wasn't crystal clear on the answers yet. So once I get the answers and I feel good about it, I'll be a yay, but right now it's a nay, okay?
I like that.
And then, other than that, I just wanted to say the Stark Parks, I had a chance to ride the park trails a little bit this weekend. If you haven't had a chance, it's a fantastic amenity. They're making great progress over there in Market with the underground bridge. And I know they're going to have a meeting here coming up on the master plan for the Stark Parks. So keep a lookout for that if you're interested in going to the meeting. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Ware.
Okay. So many of you have seen the sign, and they've done a really good job of advertising that the bridge on East Hill will begin, I believe it's tomorrow. And so, Laura, you're going to have to find a new way to work. But I think that it's a nice bridge to be done, and a lot of it was all grant monies, and then we can talk about the different metal that we will attach to that. The tennis courts are coming along in the Eastwoods, and hopefully going to have some pickleball lines in there as well. So those are being completely redone. And then Pat and I drove around the entire neighborhood, or the entire ward, last Friday, and we're looking at streets that we thought were appropriate for CRAs, and also just looking at some different parks that may or may not need improvements, and what we can maybe transform. Did you get on your search, Pat, to see how we can transform tennis courts into something else? So it was very nice to do that, and I thank the director for doing that. I hadn't done that before, and just appreciate that. And Laura, I appreciate all the things you're doing with this levy and getting back to people, and you're timely about it, and you answer the questions in the right manner. And if council people too, if we have questions during the week, don't be afraid to reach out to Laura so that when we come here, we can already have those answers ready to go and we're set to move forward, or not, but at least you'll have your answers. Thanks.
Thank you. Member Keesley.
No report.
Member Revolt.
Thank you.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
I'll honor Mr. Tripp's request to discuss the reasons for my yes vote this evening. I think with the exception of Member Fultz, the planning for this safety building began in the year 2000 when I was mayor. It was evident then, as it is now, that we were rapidly outgrowing our space in the facility. Moreover, and the chief can speak more eloquently than I can, that the large trend in our safe fire and EMS safety forces was their combination. Back in 2000, we had two separate entities with two distinct chiefs, if my recollection is correct. We don't have that anymore. And now we have fire and EMS respond, same people respond to the same calls, basically. In the interim period, we've had 2 recessions and the loss of Hoover, and I think that those episodes probably helped derail the planning for that. I know the mayor and I had some fairly robust conversations about raising the income tax back in 2008. We went through the exercise of becoming efficient, which included an auditor of state's performance audit to try to bring our costs down. I think many people around this table share the same view that I do, that this is taxpayer money. And I think we've got one vote that's a no, and we've got probably some other folks who in their heart of hearts are pretty uncomfortable about asking for an income tax increase. The need doesn't go away. What's different now, and I can say this having taken the long view, we probably have a team in place today that we never had in place in 2000 or in the years after, who can execute this project. I don't want to embarrass anybody, but I'm pretty confident in our administrative team that we can execute this project on budget, on time. And that is not an insignificant consideration in my mind, Larry. Can we do this and do it right? So I think as we look at this, I think we're poised, and ultimately the voters are going to make the call. There is no perfect solution. We'll let them make the decision. And part of that decision is an understanding that now when the bell rings, that we may have to dispatch people from station 1 to station 2 to get the bus or vice versa, that we lose time on response. Correct, Chief? So, again, our goal is to make sure that, particularly on EMS runs, that we make good use of the golden hour when people really need help. So that's the underlying scheme of this. Second issue came up was a question of vision. And I would say that there is a lot more activity that's going on behind the scenes to get this city and the school system in a better place. There's more conversation. We've had more collegial discussions with school leadership. We have revisited the master plan. Mark prepared an excellent summary of what's been done. We've convened some meetings with some outside experts on what they have done to rebuild their downtown. We're moving in that direction. We have an administrator who's thinking in a new and different way that I think will please some people if we can pull a project or two off. But those conversations are occurring, and to Dominic's point, indeed, some of that financing may include some philanthropy. So the pieces and parts are there. We don't have it yet, but I think the vision is there. So at any rate, that's my report. Mr. Tripp, I hope that helps explain my yes vote this evening. I think one of the other things is this, is that, to Stephanie's point, we're going to play this out till August. We're going to have a council meeting on July 9th. We're going to have a council meeting on July 23rd. So we're going to have plenty of time. We're using social media to respond to questions. I think we're going to try to have our hands on this. The chiefs have promised more detailed information about kind of what some of their requirements are and what their current situation is. I think those things will get filled out. Again, what we're trying to do is make sure we don't miss an election deadline, which is August 8th, if we want to get it on. And I think one of the other things is this, is that I had a conversation with Jeff Wendorf. Great guy. He said that the city and the school, this is like the Serengeti. We're both circling the same shrinking watering hole. That's his phrase. I wish I had created it. We're trying to find ways to do things with shrinking resources, and there's no real good way. I think one of the things that we really want to do is we don't want to jeopardize what the school is doing. And we want to be cooperative, we want to be supportive, and they're going to do the same thing we are. They're going to come up with a plan and they're going to carry it to the voters. And I think at the end of the day, when you look at our charter, the political authority in this community rests with the voters. Our job is to get them to a decision. If the decision is up, great. If it's down, they've spoken, and we move on. So that's my monologue.
That's an excellent report, Darrell. Thank you. Travis Serrano.
No report.
Foltz.
Thank you. Remember, we both had great talking points, so it's hard to just add to them. But I think the thing that I'm looking at is we put $10 to $12 million probably 15 years ago into our water system. We had a lot of money at one time. We made decisions to put it back in the neighborhoods with infrastructure. Put storm sewers in, put sanitary in, and put curbs in. I think that's done a wonderful thing for our infrastructure for our neighborhoods. We put in a lot of money in the pool. We see some great grant opportunities for our parks. And now, it's police and fire's time. It probably was their time before, but it just wasn't right. The dynamics have changed from across the street, where we had a volunteer fire department. If something happened, they let them out of the jobs. It came out and they staffed our fire department. That's no longer the case. We have one that I think we talked about a month ago, one of the best cities to retire in Ohio. Mm-hmm. And that means we need very efficient EMS. You just got to look at it straight ahead. And how do we do that? We have it under one roof, one building, and being as efficient as we can with those units going out to serve our public. We ought to be good stewards to the public. And I think we're doing that when we're looking at the next 40 years of our police and fire department. What are we going to do? We're going to stand pat and try to make it work, or are we going to be responsible and advocate for a nice future for North Canton with our constituents, our taxpayers? That's what we're doing here. So I challenge the administration, this council, whoever's here, to get it done before 10 years. I think there's be no more responsible thing to do to say, we asked for 10, we're done in 8 or 9, we're going to take it off the books. Hopefully that could be the case. And I think we have the wherewithal to do that here with the right people in the right position. So, this is a great place to retire. Our income tax is still going to be one of the lowest in the state. And I think the timing's right to get it done. And it's not in spite of the schools. I think there's room for the schools with property tax to continue their their mission statement to get better buildings and to look to their future too. There's a lot of good, hardworking people that are teachers in this community, and our school system is beyond reproach. And I think when you look at North Canton, it's the schools, it's the safety forces, it's government, it's our street, our snow removal, it's our parks, it's everything. And this is the next thing that needs addressed, so that's why I'm in favor of it.
All right, thank you. All good comments. Director of Law.
No report.
Director of Finance.
No report.
Director of Administration.
No report.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes. First off, I appreciate all the comments that were made tonight by Scott Kelly and Larry Tripp and Melanie Roll and Chuck Osborne. You know, when you look at the city and the vision that we've had for the city, at least, you know, even going back to when I first started serving as the city administrator, and Patrick DiOrio, when I first became mayor, started serving as the city council person, and for those of you that have been around for a long time, knew that most of the discussions that we had were, it was very hard for us to find agreement in most everything. He certainly served to refine me a lot. And it also goes the same thing for our council members that have been around here for a long time. And so we don't take the issue lightly at all. There's not an easy solution to this. And when we look at the needs of the police department, and you look at the tremendous pressure that our police officers are under 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. That's just not North Canton, but it's all across the country. Trying to get applicants for new positions. We used to be like 80 to 100. Now, 14, 15. It's not an easy job. And when we hire these young men and young women, the same thing goes with the fire department, because the calls continue to go up. We absolutely have to make sure that they have the right resources and equipment. And the setup that we have now, as Councilman Revolt mentioned, we tried to be as cost efficient and as effective as we can, but at some point, you have to make that decision. Are we going to invest in the resources to keep the community safe? And after looking at this is now, as mayor, this has been my 13th year. And Scott, as you had mentioned, it really was one of the best decisions I made not to raise the income tax. But you come to a point where there is no perfect solution. And I think that given the circumstances, given the needs that we have, I support this decision. I think it's the best option that we have, because our number one, when you look at a vision for the city, our primary responsibility is to make sure that the people who live here and work here are safe. And I think that, well, I know that North Canton is tops in that area throughout the state, and we want to make sure and keep it that way. Also, one other point of good news is we had our Hoover High School team that went to Washington, D.C., and they came in on the airport this past week. It really was impressive. It was very exciting. And it was, they developed a product, and it was part of junior achievement. And what they did is they had to solve a social problem and at the same time develop a product that they could sell. So they took paper, they recycled the paper and made it into like these, what they called seed bombs. And then they put wildflowers into these seed bombs, and they were selling them. And that was their project. And then they had to go out and do a presentation in Washington, D.C. So there was a total of 15 finalists from across the whole country, and they won. And the social aspect was that you see the declining bees in, throughout the country. So this was really to encourage the growth of wildflowers and be able to do it in a cost-effective manner so they could sell them and give them to residents, and also to help increase the bee population. So they took first place, and I think this is like the 6th or 7th year that they've been through this. So it really was really, really impressive. So special congratulations to all of them, and we'll have the teachers and the students up here sometime to recognize them. That's all I have.
Yeah, it was awesome. The company's name was Believe.
Yeah, what was that again?
Believe.
Yeah, Believe. Yes, that's right.
Yeah, pretty exciting. And kudos to the Canton Airport for really welcome. They had the fire trucks out there and they gave the water cannon salute as the plane was coming down. It was crazy.
Yeah, and they're going to be in, Chief Bacon has arranged so that they will ride on one of our fire trucks in the 4th of July parade. And so we get their banners on the side. So it's just always nice to recognize our students when they achieve something like that. I don't know that we've had too many national championships, have we? First time for junior achievement, so it's really, really exciting.
National championship,
Yeah.
At Mike Grady and Joe Rosa, the teachers. So,
Yes.
Yeah.
So it was really
Good stuff.
cool.
Good stuff.
That's all I have.
All right, thank you. Madam Clerk.
No report.
Okay. Finish up, just kind of echo what Darrell mentioned in his report. We have a regular council meeting July 9th and July 23rd. And that's it for our July schedule. And before I entertain a motion to adjourn, I want to ask, need a quick 20 minutes exec session. So if I could have a motion and a second to meet into executive session with law director concerning disputes involving the city that are subject of pending or imminent court action.
So moved.
Second.
Very reluctant, so moved. 20 minutes.
Soretta?
Yes.
Folds?
Yes.
Fontaine?
Yes.
Kiesling?
Yes.
Peters?
Yes.
Revolt?
Yes.
And Waring.
Yes.
7 yes to adjourn into executive session.
Okay, we are in executive session. For those, when we come out of executive session, we'll be adjourning the meeting. No other action will be taken.